So thankfully, the Lord knew when we needed to head back to Arizona. I'd rather be here right now than in Oklahoma with its temperatures. Or, as far as I know, our family there, they do have power, but to the south, Texas and some of those parts are in blackout. So do pray for our brothers and sisters out there. So we're going to be looking here at does the life of a religion's founder matter? So we can't have time for every single other religion, but we'll look at a few, Muhammad and Joseph Smith and a few others here. So a common thing for what Christians will hear from people who are non-Christians or are people who try to be very broad, politicians or those that just try to have cliche phrases to appeal to a big crowd. You'll hear things like, well, Jesus was a good man, a great religious teacher. Jesus was a good man, just like Muhammad was a good man and a good religious teacher, and just like Joseph Smith was a good man and a good religious teacher, just like Gandhi was a good man, good religious teacher. And you hear those things. So major things wrong with that statement. Obviously, we know that Jesus was far more than just a man. He is God himself. None of us have, there's no controversy with that among this crowd here. So there's that part that's wrong with that phrase, but also the other part of that phrase of, well, let's look at the life of Muhammad. Was he actually a good man? If we could look at his life today. Was Joseph Smith, if we took a lens to his life and his character, would we call him a good man, a moral, upstanding character that we would look at here? So warning that this is not going to be a politically correct, all-embracing message. This is one with offensive material, so if you're watching at home and are easily offended, get your safe space ready because you're probably going to need it. Probably going to need it. So, but we'll look at some of these here. So, Muhammad, obviously, the founder of the Islam religion, and Islam kind of branches off. So it comes about 600 years after the life of Jesus, and he pulls a lot of aspects from Judaism and several aspects from Christianity and kind of melds it into his own version with Islam. But it's a works-based religion. If you follow the 5 pillars of Islam, you go to heaven, and it's all things that you can do externally. So, but a lot of Muslims have no idea about the actual life of the prophet, of the person that they're basing their eternal destiny on. They just kind of blindly follow that. In fact, there's sort of an awe around him that don't even mention his name, even though probably 3/4 of men born into Islam are named Muhammad in some way, but you don't mention the prophet Muhammad. So he's just referred to as the prophet. He's revered in conservative Islam. You're not even supposed to draw pictures of people. Just designs and calligraphy is okay, but pictures of people is a form of idolatry and a blasphemy. So they don't make statues of Muhammad. They don't have pictures of Muhammad traditionally in the more conservative, like Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, those places. So a lot of people would, as the billion Muslims on the planet, many of them are quite ignorant as far as what is the lifestyle of the man that they follow. But if we actually look at the life of Muhammad, he had a total, during his lifetime, of 19 wives and concubines. You put them together. And so I don't know that that's what we would necessarily call in our day and age a good, upstanding, moral person. And of course, I talked a couple months ago about polygamy in the Bible, and we'll sort of look at polygamy outside of the Bible here with Muhammad and with Joseph Smith in a second. But yeah, so 19 wives and concubines. And like I mentioned in the polygamy lesson, it's just like, it's beyond comprehension of some. I mean, how many does a guy need, really? Seriously, this is very messed up in some of these deals. But not only is it an absurd number for one person, but then when you go into depravity and you go into perverted lifestyles, nothing satisfies you normally, so you have to go into further and further things to get the same thrill. It's like drugs. Like you start with alcohol, you start with marijuana and tobacco, and then you go to, but later on, then you're on heroin and you're on crack and you're on meth and you're on the harder drugs later. That's how it is for sexual perversion. And so Muhammad, by the end of his life, the youngest of those 19 wives that he married, she was 9 years old when he was 53. So he was 50. Now, I guarantee you, your average Muslim walking down the street, you go to Minnesota, where Brother Dale's from, where there's a bunch of them been moved in there. You ask your average Muslim in that part of the country, they're going to have no idea, absolutely no idea about these. But yeah, that's what, and this isn't something they hide. You can look it up on any kind of biography of the prophet there. But yeah, his youngest wife was 9 years old. Can't remember if I know that. I think it was 6. She was actually 6 when they married on paper, and then consummated their marriage at 9. So it's like crying out loud. And so yeah, and it's I believe in the state of Arizona we have laws about people like that. Pedophilia. I mean, that's what it is. That's what the guy. This is what you want to base your eternal destiny on, this kind of character of a person? Seriously. And so. But not only that, it goes beyond. So Muhammad married a widow woman named Khadijah, and she had children in her previous marriage, and so Muhammad had adopted her children and their spouses that they eventually married. And so it was as Muhammad spent more time with them, and as he's an older man, as he sees his adopted son and adopted daughter-in-law, his adopted son's wife, that a man without any kind of self-control, walks in one day and sees his adopted daughter-in-law, is like, oh, well, I'd like to have her as one of my extra wives. And so his adopted son saw the writing on the wall, and it's like, okay, so he divorced his wife so that Muhammad could take her, and so he stole his adopted son's wife. And how convenient that at about the same time that Muhammad himself was feeling those passions toward his adopted daughter-in-law, that Allah just so happened to give a new chapter to the Quran that said that was okay for Muhammad to. What an amazing coincidence that everything just lined up just like that, of how Allah happened to make that revelation just at that time that said that this was all right for Muhammad to do that. And of course we see, now if you go to a Muslim country today, the conservative, the hardliner Saudi Arabian, the Wahhabianism branch of Islam, the hardcore was the Sunni, from which like terrorism, ISIS, that sort of branch of Islam, the literal, what we call the fundamentalists, the ones that take the Quran as the literal word of Allah, just as we as Free Will Baptists are considered fundamentalist, even though sometimes that word has some baggage nowadays, unfortunately. But we're considered that because we believe that the Bible is the literal word of God. Well, our equivalent on the Muslim side, the fundamentalists, that they teach that Islamic man can have 4 wives at a time. 4 wives at a time. And I talked about this with polygamy. That's how they found Osama bin Laden, because they were watching this house. He would never walk outside. Osama bin Laden wouldn't while he was in hiding. He would always stay indoors. He would never walk out. He'd never look up. The satellites couldn't find him. But they had this house the CIA was watching for over a year. They thought he was there because they knew his right-hand man was there. And they were able, by watching it and recording, they were able to figure out there's 5 different marriage-age women in this house, and Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, he can only be married to 4. That means there's another male hiding somewhere in there. They sent the SEAL team in, and he was there, and they took him out. And so that's what they teach. But that doesn't jive. How do you can say to your people, well, you guys are limited to 4, but I'm the prophet, I'm the founder of this religion, I get 19. That doesn't exactly match up there with, you live by this standard, but I'm the leader, I get an exception. How convenient that you get an exception. Isn't that how every cult works? That the leader gets an exception, whether you're Jim Jones, whether you're David Koresh, whatever kind of whacked up religion that you want to start there, that the leader always gets an exception. And that's what, of course, we don't see that with Jesus. We see Jesus as the servant, that he does what the disciples are squeamish to do themselves, that Jesus gets there and does the work himself. And that's a true, biblically, that the pastor, the shepherd, whoever is leading the people should be the first one to jump into the dirty jobs or the icky things, take the greater sacrifice. Apostle Paul refused to take offerings from the new churches that he was starting. Instead, earned his own bread by his tent-making work. That way, no one could accuse him of, oh, you're just in here to swindle us for money. And so he was a servant. He gave up what a normal request would have been in order to serve, in order to reach those people. But not so with cults. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 23, verse 4, says about the Pharisees, they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. The Pharisees had all these rules for people. Oh, you can only take 2,000 steps on a Sabbath day, and you can absurd deals. You can't let paint dry on the Sabbath day, and you can't do this, can't do that. They had all these rules, but yet they themselves would, because they're the rule makers, they get an exception. And of course, one of the biggest warning signs about Muhammad there is that he is the exclusive writer of the Quran. And I use the K spelling, that's how I was taught. I guess the modern new spelling is with a Q, Quran with a Q, but Quran, either way, however you want to spell it. But he is the exclusive writer. That's a big, if you want to know, am I in a cult or not? Is there only one person that writes the religious teachings that you're basing your eternal destiny on? If so, you're in a cult. That's how it works. So whereas the Bible has 40 some odd, give or take, different human writers, it has one author. It's all uniform in what it teaches and in its message, but God used 40 some odd different human men to be the pens as he gives his word to mankind. And not only that, but we see their flaws. We see the flaw from every single one of them. We see if Moses is the exclusive writer of the Old Testament, we're not going to find the thing about him killing the Egyptian and hiding him in the sand. He's going to erase that and scratch that out of there. We're not going to find the flaws of Jonah. We're not going to find the flaws of David and many of these men there, but instead we see the flaws of the writer. Peter would be, if he was the only one who wrote the New Testament, he would be scratching out that part about cutting off the servant's ear before they arrest Jesus. Or Paul would be scratching out the part about him persecuting and killing Christians. But no, we see they're flawed people, and yet that's not something. I have read the Quran myself. I haven't read the Book of Mormon yet, but I have read the Quran from cover to cover, and there's not a single thing in there that shows any kind of flaw of Muhammad. There's no blemish on his record. There's no criticism whatsoever. It's just he's the prophet. You listen to him and everything that he says. And so the Bible, that shows how the Bible is completely different from any other religious book, because multiple people that wrote it, and it shows the problems of the people, but it shows God's solutions to their problems in spite of that. So there's Muhammad. Next one, maybe not quite as well known for people, but we'll get into if those over are Korean members of our church, they might be a little bit more familiar with this. Sun Myung Moon, he was a big guy back like my dad's generation, not so much now. He passed away in 2012. Big thing, definitely in the 70s and 80s, involved in American politics even, and hanging out with presidents and schmoozing with them. So he's the founder of the Unification Church there in South Korea. And so this is, we would call this a cult, really, that they talk about Jesus, but it's a false Jesus and a false teaching that they embrace. And a very large movement there, especially in Korea and even in the United States. But sometimes South Korea is called like the most Christian nation ever, because it has the percentage of Christians there is higher than even the United States and any other place in the world. But the numbers are a little skewed because you get cults like this that are counted in the largest church in the world, the largest Christian church in the world is there in Seoul, South Korea. Well, they're not exactly what we would call, according to people who believe the Bible word for word. We wouldn't call every single one of those groups Christian, unfortunately. So. But Sun Myung Moon, he was back in the day, he had his teaching that God raises up a man every 2,000 years. So you have Adam, and then approximately 2,000 years later, you get Abraham, and then after that, you get, for about 2,000 years, give or take, from Abraham, you get Jesus, and then 2,000 years after Jesus, it's time for a new man, and that man is Sun Myung Moon. How convenient that he just happens to be the man there, the man for the hour. And so he Like many of these cult leaders, he claimed to be the return of Jesus. Forget the whole part about the trumpet and the rapture and meeting in the clouds. He returned. He returned. We just all missed it. We didn't know he was back. So, and he says that Jesus was flawed, that Jesus didn't come to die on the cross. So this is what his cult teaches. He didn't come to die on the cross, that Jesus came, his purpose was to actually marry lots of women and have lots of children here on earth, and to have a pure divine bloodline on earth. That was Jesus' purpose, but Jesus missed. He went to the cross, he was crucified, that slipped up on him somehow. So Jesus failed at that, so therefore Sun Myung Moon is to take his place, and he is to have as many children, divine children, here in the world as possible. Like many cults, unfortunately, it's the kind of thing where all the female members become the property of the founder, is how the path that those often go down as you turn to the dark side. And so he has with this, any female members, they have to have 3 physical sexual encounters with him to be officially counted with the group. And then he is married to, or was before he died in 2012, married to his wife Han, and that they were the divine parents sent from God. So they have these, I'll have a picture of this when it comes up. They have these mass weddings. It's a mind-blowing thing when you see it. Thousands of people get married at the same time, and he'll even pick the spouses for the people. It's sort of like a miniature pope or something. It's not just enough to tell you how to get to heaven, but I'm going to change and control every aspect of your life on your way there along with that. And so, crazy deal. But he was sent to prison a couple times there in South Korea before his death, jailed for promiscuity, of course, and for, unfortunately, a common thing with many cults, tax evasion. Those taxes, those religious groups, Kenneth Copeland and Benny Hinn, they've never committed tax evasion or any kind of problem there. Sure, but yeah, that Jesus was the second Adam, and so that he came to that according to Sun Myung Moon, Jesus' purpose was to find the second Eve, marry her, and then would have lots of children through her, and that would recreate the divine bloodline. But of course, that he failed, so therefore it's his duty to have and procreate the divine bloodline. Number 3 is Charles Taze Russell. He's the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses. He gets a medal for being a cult founder who is not into perversion and sexual promiscuity. So there's an award for that, because it's a very rare thing to be a cult leader and not to be into something with polygamy, or to be where you take all the female members of your group. So you got to win some kind of prize for that. So that prize goes to Charles Taze Russell. So I cannot, but that's all right. If it's right there, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I can go with that. Okay, so yeah, jailed several times. And here's that picture. There's those mass weddings that they do. It's crazy what they used to do. Yeah, they have these stadiums full of people, and just tons of folks there on the weddings with it. So yeah, so Charles Taze Russell, so he lived in the 1800s, and the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he was so at least he wasn't in polygamy, but he was a con artist who sold miracle wheat. There's no other way to say it. So his miracle wheat, he claimed, would yield 5 times the normal crop, and he was selling this, and this is back in 1800s dollars, which is quite a bit of money. He was selling this for $60 per bushel of the seed, when a normal regular wheat seed was going for 83 cents. So you can see he's marked up the price a little bit there. And then a newspaper did a blind test of it. They bought some and had some regular wheat and grew them side by side, and found that he was sued because it was found out that his miracle wheat was actually less performing than normal wheat as far as what it would yield. And but yeah, so he took advantage of people's religious guise of this. Well, this is God's gift to us. In fact, he said, quote, in his publication Zion Watchtower, said, "The miracle wheat, our thought is, this is the natural way God's preparing for the millennium, when the earth is going to yield her increase. So you definitely want to get ready for the millennium, buy your millennium wheat there. And not only that, but he also had millennium beans there that would cure cancer. So, I mean, what is this guy? He's a snake oil salesman is what he, oh, it cures this. It'll, whatever it doesn't kill, it'll cure for, it'll take the paint right off the car and whatever. It'll do anything. Buy this, go call within the next 20 minutes. He'd have been a good infomercial guy for sure. And he's out there, and that's how he's raising the money and getting people to follow him. He also lied about being an ordained minister. He was not ordained, but when he was charged in court, they said, "Are you ordained? Is what you're trying to start a religion?" He said that he was ordained when he never had been. Now, in the to us comparing that to like Muhammad and his pedophilia, well, that's not so bad. But it's sort of though. But why would you bother lying about something like that? It didn't necessarily have to be that big of a deal. You just tell the truth, really. But and so then this was in a time when, and Brother David's talked on this in his approach a bit on the. During the 1800s was the predominant view of the end times, at least in America, was called amillennialism. And that is that the world is just going to get better and better until it becomes like heaven on earth and heaven on earth unite. And if we were alive during that time, you could sort of see some things as you've got the Industrial Revolution, you've got agricultural revolution, you've got medical revolution. So you've got a lot of progress that we've got. We're going from horses and buggies to railroads, and you've got telegraphs, and you've got the John Deere plows and tractors that are making your life a whole lot better. You've got plenty of food. So the world is improving. It is getting better. And so you could see where people would mistakenly interpret that to think that, well, this is going to be awesome. It's just going to keep getting better and keep getting better. And so there's just a lot of religious fervor about the millennium and Jesus coming back. And that was a culture when people had a lot of spiritual knowledge, but were not very grounded in the truth, unfortunately. So this is all the time. Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventists, Mormons, all of them are going to start around the same time, the 1800s in America, as people are having these attitudes. And so, and this all-millennialism, and there's still some people that hold to that. It's not as popular as it used to be, but it was very popular up until World War I. Then World War I just crushed most people's dreams of that because people thought, oh, the world's going to get better. Well, they learned that factories and mass production and automation not only can be used to make the world a better place, it can be used to make machine guns, and it can be used to make airplanes and bombs, and it can be used to tear the world apart. And so the tragedy and the scale of death that had never been seen before in World War I really changed a lot of Christians' views about the end times. But we can see, though, with Charles Taze Russell and the Jehovah's Witness group, though, like a lot of cult groups, he wanted to give specific dates. Jesus is coming back on this day. So Jesus was coming back in 1874. They went out there, and he didn't show up. And so it was like, okay, well, what do we do? And so we'd try again. He's coming back in 1914. Well, if you know the history of 1914, that's when World War I started, and when a lot of those dreams of the world becoming a better and better place were shattered. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses today believe that Jesus actually came back in 1914. We missed it. Of course, we weren't alive, but that's what they believe, that Jesus actually returned. So we're living in the kingdom of God right now. Did you realize that? That you're living in the millennium. This is the happy time when Jesus rules and reigns on the earth. That's what they believe. Jesus came back secretly in 1914, and of course they're all vying for the 144,000 witnesses there in Revelation, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. They're all trying to, the top 144 Jehovah's Witnesses get to be those people. So you're all fighting to. If you're a better one, then maybe you can knock out number 143 and 782, or you can knock him down and take his spot or something. So, it's a very similar. It's how Seventh-day Adventists began, a similar thing, that they got together. Jesus is coming back on this day. He didn't show up. Why didn't he show up? Oh, it's because we haven't been keeping the Sabbath, because we've been meeting on Sunday instead of on Saturday. And so that's where you get lots of cults from, wrong ideas there. And I mean, he's the best one on the list so far. He's not into polygamy and other matters, but it's still not someone I'd want to build my eternal destiny on his teaching for sure. And then, of course, Joseph Smith. This is our probably a lot of us have Mormon neighbors and a very strong influence in this area. Now, I actually have not on our street. We have one Jehovah's Witness in the corner. And that's it. I haven't met any, as far as open or practicing neighbors, at least on our direct street for Mormonism. And there's Jehovah's Witness lady. She's not ashamed about that. She'll tell you, you ask her like, "Oh, did you have a good Thanksgiving?" "Oh, I don't celebrate any holidays." Or she's not mean. She's just how she is. She's not ashamed of her beliefs. But yeah, it's unusual. I would have thought we're coming on 2 years that we've lived in Arizona. I'd have thought they'd have knocked the paint off our door. The Mormons would have going around but they're not quite emphasizing that as much as they used to. So, but Joseph Smith, and probably many of y'all have been to one of the temples around here, the temple up in Mesa, the temple, newer one in Gilbert, and they got these wonderful murals of him, and he's just glowing and so picturesque, and they lift him up. Joseph Smith is the model person, the model family man that all good Mormons want to follow. We want to emulate the life of Joseph Smith, follow the prophet of what he would do. But if we could put his life under a microscope and just see him, would we call him a good man or call him the model that we want everyone to follow? Well, I would think not. So he was, during his time, again in the 1800s, that he was married or sealed to at least 36 different women. Some of them had husbands already in this world. Now, in Mormon theology, and they don't talk, this is the danger of it, is they are very appealing on the surface. So they are clean cut. If you follow Mormon teaching, you don't drink, you don't smoke, you're good with your money, you have kids, you have a stable family, you work hard at your job. A very good family image on the outside, and that's very attractive to people who have religious questions and religious leanings. And so they draw people in. They don't tell you the nitty-gritty. In fact, they tried never to tell you these things, and so you have to dig this up on your own. But yeah, they don't tell you the deep down. They don't tell you their end times theology, which is quite a bit different from the Bible. So in their theology, they believe that Jesus is a created being. Satan is, of course, a created being, and on equal planes, so that Jesus would be equal, or some would say Jesus and Satan are brothers, but I don't know that they would use that terminology, but that Jesus is an equal being to Satan, as well as other angelic beings are equal, and that Jesus, our planet is one of many and inhabited planets in the different dimensions of the universe, and that Jesus came to be the Savior for our planet, and that if you're a good Mormon, that if you're good enough and achieve enough, that when you die after your life, if you're a man, you will get your own planet, and you will be the Jesus, the Savior of your own planet in the future. And if your wife, here are wives, plural, here on earth is good to you, if you are sealed, and to be sealed, you have to go through these rites. You have to be married within the Mormon temple or in the ward, married according to the Mormon practice, that if you were sealed on earth, then it's not automatic, but you as the man have the choice to call her up to join you as one of your Eves, as the wife, and to procreate and to populate your planet in the future. And so you got to be a good wife. You can't mess it up. It's what I joke with Katie, like, you burn the biscuits a little bit much. I'm not going to, you're kind of on the line whether I'm going to call you or not in the afterlife there. And but that's what, so sealed. So you can, and of course, he's making all this up as he's going along, but you can be sealed, you can be legally, according to the state of Arizona, or according to the United States government, you can be married, a woman could be married to another man, but be, in Mormon theology, sealed to someone else who's not her husband. Of course, that's quite convenient for Joseph Smith, isn't it? And but it's whoever you're sealed to in their teaching, that's who you would spend eternity with. So be careful who you do that with. because eternity is a long time to be stuck with somebody. And so, yeah, and so he didn't necessarily, I mean, he slept with the majority of these women, but he didn't necessarily sleep with all 36 of them. He just was sealed with some of them. But even so, it's like, yeah, this is some problems, absolutely. Now, as we're going through this, you're going to notice there's sort of a common theme, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's David Koresh, it seems to be a common theme with these guys and their level of perversion. So he, the youngest of his wives, plural, 2 wives, they were 14 years old when Joseph Smith himself was 37. So I think that would qualify as pedophilia, again, according to the state of Arizona, or according to the state of Utah, or they weren't in Utah, they were in Illinois at the point. And so, and yeah, definitely questionable behavior here, not someone we would... now, Joseph Smith is going to die at age 38. He's going to be killed by a lynch mob. So he didn't get... Muhammad got to marry 9-year-olds when he was 52 or whatever. Joseph Smith never got to live into his 50s. So who knows what he could have achieved if he'd have lived to be in his 50s. But even so, still, a 14-year-old with a 37-year-old guy. Multiple of them. 2 14-year-olds. And then, so he goes to this place and he tries to fool around with all the women and all the guys' wives and tries to seduce all these women. So he's not a popular guy, and people want to run him out of town. This guy's trouble, and so, but he's got a devoted group of followers with him, and so multiple times he leads armed revolts against the government, whether the state government or even the federal government, there in Missouri and in Illinois, and he's in... his second one was in this place, Illinois, you might have heard of it, called Nauvoo. Drive down the road here, there's Nauvoo Station there at Nauvoo. Well, that's what it's named after. It's named after the Mormon town where Joseph Smith is buried, where he was killed. So some of our church folks live there in Nauvoo Station, but yeah, that's what it's named after. So he's in town Nauvoo, Illinois, leads his armed revolt, is unsuccessful. He's put in prison, and then he gets killed by a lynch mob while in prison there at age 38, and that's where he is buried, as we'll see in a second. So, definitely. So yeah, he's an insurrectionist, a terrorist, a polygamist, a pedophile. Is this who you want to base your eternal destiny on? This kind of character of a person. Yet a big chunk of people that live all around us, that is, are there more cars here? Are there more cars at the different wards around us every Sunday? It's unfortunate in the numbers. And so, but yeah, that he... So his teaching was that he was given a special message from the angel Moroni. That's what Mormonism is called, after Moroni. And of course, a theme here, he is the exclusive writer of the Book of Mormon. The exclusive writer of the Book of Mormon. So it seems to come along with whatever religion you want to start. If you want everyone to give their wives to you, if you're the only voice of God, then who can question you? Absolutely. So... but yeah, the angel Moroni gave him these golden tablets, and then gave him the written in some unknown Egyptian script, and then gave him the ability to translate those hieroglyphics, and that's where the Book of Mormon comes from. And we can get all into the lost tribes, and they literally believe that the American Indians, the Cherokee, Choctaw, all them are Jewish in their ethnicity and their genetic makeup, even though there's absolutely no archaeological or anthropological evidence to match that. In any sense. And so, and that doesn't match up. I haven't had a lot of experience talking directly with Mormons or witnessing to them, but the ones that I have talked to, they are absolutely clueless with what the Bible says. And you ask them, because they claim to be Christians. Mormonism wants to be recognized as legitimate Christianity so much. And even though they're for redefining marriage, because, well, if homosexuals can get married, then polygamy coming back. So they're for a lot of these things that evangelical traditional Christianity doesn't stand for, but they so want to be recognized as that. And so they'll say, I don't know as far as in 2021, but it used to be they'd show up at your door with an old King James Bible, and the original King James. They'd show up with that, and they would know their cherry-picked Bible verses. They would know those well, but they don't know the Bible as far as like studying it and learning it. Because in my talk with them, it's like, well, what do you do with the conflicts between the Book of Mormon and the conflicts with the Bible? What conflicts? they don't know. They honestly don't know because they're never taught, and they don't know what the Bible says. So they don't know, for instance, Galatians chapter 1, verse 8, Paul says, but we, or an angel from heaven, but though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which is preached to you, then let him be accursed. So if there's some angel, whether that's Moroni or Muhammad received his visions from an angel that at convenient times in his life, some of those chapters in the Quran, or another one I forgot to mention, that some of his wives were bickering about, well, he's spending too much time with this wife instead of with this wife here, and he needs to be more fair with the rest of the 17 wives. And they were bickering about that. Well, how convenient that Allah gave a new chapter that, the prophet, he can spend his time with whichever wife he wants, and the rest of y'all need to can it and just listen up and fall into line. And it's like, how convenient. So same thing, Joseph Smith there in the Book of Mormon. And so they have, if you ask them, well, what about the Book of Revelation when it says, don't take away from this book, don't add to this book? Oh, well, they would have absolutely no idea that any of that exists or what comes to be with it. So people, I did not come up with this, but some very clever people on the internet came up with these memes and ideas that go out there. We can say that my wife called me a pedophile. That's a big word for a 14-year-old to use there. But if you want to make your Mormon neighbors mad, you can send that to them. But yeah, I mean, there's truth in comedy with it. Unfortunately, that you'll laugh or cry because those are the choices. So quickly though, let's look at Jesus. Obviously, Jesus is quite a bit different from any other. So the Bible's crystal clear. Jesus is without sin. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 14, 15. Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. So Jesus went through temptation, that he knew what it was like to be hungry, to be rejected, to be abused, and all the things that, to be a teenager with hormones. Jesus had all of those life experiences, but he went through every temptation without sin and every single part of it. And so 2 Corinthians 5:21, for he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. That the whole point of the cross and the sacrifice, it would be meaningless if Jesus was a sinful person. He could not pay for anyone else's sins if he had his own sin to care for. But because he's sinless, then the sacrifice is possible. Now, the Bible is clear on the faults of the other people. You look in the Bible, you're going to see the flaws of the other characters. We're going to see the mistakes that were made, even some Samson and those that had a lot of mistakes, but even some that were a little cleaner for the most part, but we're going to see flaws there. But with Jesus, though, that he is different, obviously, and that he is completely sinless. And the Bible gives us pictures from his birth to the end of his life, and yet he lives through all that without sin. We also see with Jesus that in John chapter 8, verse 44 through 47, he challenges the crowd around there to find sin, convict me of sin. Which of you is going to reveal sin in me? Verse 44, he pointing to the Pharisees, you are of your father the devil, and desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning, does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks it from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. But because I tell the truth, you do not believe me. Which of you convicts me of sin? If I tell you the truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of God hears God's words, therefore you do not hear because you are not of God. So Jesus openly says, which of you convicts me of sin? Look in my life, try to find something wrong with my life. Now, do we have any politicians that stand up there today and say, yeah, try to find some dirt on me, try to find some mud or some deep, dark secret? No, but yet Jesus challenges his opponents, find something to convict me of. And Jesus, they're not going to find any kind of secret college party tapes are not going to emerge, or, Jesus, he did blackface when he was in high school, or he did this, or he did, they're not going to find any kind of a deep, dark, hidden secret. Jesus abused this woman, or had these inappropriate images on his phone, or none of that's going to be discovered, right? Because that his life is completely sinless, completely above reproach and everything, without question, and that he challenges his enemies to find faults with him, and when they try to, that they just have to make up stuff. He says, Gospel of Mark, verse 55, now the chief priests and all the council sought testimony, so they've got Jesus on trial. They've got to have a testimony to put him to death, but they found none. So they're looking. He had challenged them earlier in John chapter 8, find something wrong with me. They got to dig up something. Where is it? So verse 56, for many bore false witness against him, but their testimonies did not agree. Then some rose up and bore false witness against him, saying, well, we've heard him say, I'll destroy this temple made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But not even then did their testimony agree. And so the only dirt they can find on him, they have to make it up. And yet even then, their stories were so out of whack that they don't even line up together. And that's exactly how it is today. They're still trying to dig up dirt today on Jesus. Every single year, new discovery here. Or here's the suppressed gospel that talks about the hidden wife of Jesus. Or that was the whole Da Vinci Code nonsense a couple years back of the Gospel of Judas or the Gospel of Thomas. Or did you know that in Leonardo da Vinci's painting of Jesus at the Last Supper, that what's supposed to be the Apostle John is very feminine, and that's actually Mary Magdalene right there beside Jesus? As if Leonardo da Vinci was there to take a photo of the Last Supper. Something. It's just total baloney. But yeah, they try to make Jesus into some kind of hippie, rebel, countercultural person wanting to destroy everything, and just absurd. And every deal of the Holy Grail is the illegitimate children of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, or baloney, okay? But that's what they just want to make up. They're going to make up all kinds of stuff over and over and trying to make up because nothing sticks. He is completely sinless. His character is without reproach. And so, yeah, he's in a world apart. Every other religion that people want to say, well, it doesn't really matter on the flaws of the person who founded our religion. What matters is their teaching. We need to follow. We need to emulate their teaching, follow that. Their specific character, Muhammad, that he gets a pass. That doesn't really matter so much. Or Joseph Smith, he gets a pass. Well, no, that's not exactly what the Bible says. If you're going to base your eternity on someone, you better have someone of impeachable or unimpeachable character. There of without reproach. And so that lastly here we'll look at, so another thing that Jesus stands apart in that everyone else is that he's not dead anymore. So that picture, if you didn't know, that's Muhammad's grave in not Mecca, in Medina. There you have to go there to see it. Now, and infidels like us can't get as close as this picture is. They wouldn't let an unbeliever or a non-Muslim person get that close to see. But his grave is there. He's still in it. His bones are still inside. You can go visit. Or if you were so inclined, you could go to Nauvoo, Illinois. Not Nauvoo Station down the road, but Nauvoo, Illinois. Over in Illinois, you could go there and you could see the grave of Joseph Smith. He's still there in his grave. In fact, you could visit all the graves of these other religious founders, whether Sun Yat Moon, whether all the rest of them, because see the graves of Buddha, see Darwin, Freud, Marx, and we don't have time for all of them, but yeah, it'd be, if we wanted to find the flaws of in the life of Karl Marx or the life of Charles Darwin, or what's the other ones on there? John Lennon. Yeah, he was a squeaky clean guy, wasn't he? John Lennon. Just imagine. And all the Confucius, all the others. Yeah, there's definitely not people you want to build your life on. But Jesus is alive. He's alive. All the rest of them are still dead in their graves, but Jesus is alive and not going to be in the grave anymore. He was dead, but is alive forevermore going forward. So there's that study. Any questions before we wrap up? Anything on there? Now, one thing we have to understand, people in cults or in false religions, they are not the enemy. We can think of that, especially in political turmoil and division and wanting to destroy your opponents politically. We can get that sense. But if Mormons knock on your door, Jehovah's Witnesses knock on your door, they are not the enemy. Oh, they are lost souls that are misguided and are need to be reached with love. Again, I'm surprised Mormons haven't knocked on my door, but if they did, here in Arizona, or when they get around to it, I'm not going to, when they open the door, I'm not going to be, well, why do you guys follow a pedophile who married 14-year-old girls? Okay. I'm not going to start with that because they're just going to throw up a wall. They're just going to throw up a wall and they're not going to listen to anything. So there is a time and a place for this knowledge. There's a time to reveal that, but I wouldn't necessarily lead with that when you're trying to reach someone who's trapped in a false teaching. Yes, Brother Dale. Yeah, yeah, and the Jehovah's Witness, their big thing is Jesus is not God. Jehovah, the Old Testament, he is God, but Jesus is not, and that's every cult or false religion. You're going to get off on Jesus. Yes, Brother David. Have someone taste your food before you try it. If you want to go into the cult founding business, get a taste tester for. Yes,
I don't think my wife would go with these cults. She's too busy being bossy.
Yeah, I mean. These guys, I don't know how their heads don't explode or what. I mean, the charisma and the drive and the emotional roller coaster they go on, plus trying to keep 19 women in line and all the, I mean, how do you do it in a day with it's just beyond me, but whatever. So, all right, well, if that's everything, let's all stand and close in prayer.